Pauper's had a bit of a Splinter Twin situation for a while, ever since the printing of Basking Broodscale in Modern Horizons 3. That sped up the format to the point where other combo decks have actually had a chance to thrive. Think of 2-card combos like Freed from the Real and Axebane Guardian that can theoretically create infinite mana, but does require you to have a certain amount of defenders out on the battlefield. Or what about other combo decks like Cycle Storm that take Dranith Stinger, a cycler and a win condition, putting them into your graveyard and feeding out large mana sinks like Songs of the Damned. You generate mana, spin your wheels a bit, return those creatures back to your hand with something like Reaping the Graves, then create some mana, play out the said Stinger, and win the game by cycling your hand over and over again. The beauty of this deck is it actually can win in response to decking out, because in response to the cycling trigger, you can just cycle again, essentially make it so you don't actually draw out your whole deck. It's actually kind of foolproof. The reason I'm going so deep into this is that I believe we have a new win condition for it, a new Splinter Twin situation of sorts, a card out of Aetherdrift that provides help to 3 different strategies: one combo deck, one burn deck, and potentially one brand new deck altogether. We've had the full set revealed since last Friday, a couple of days for all of y'all to look at it, so let me know in the comment section down below if I'm missing any cards. But today we're going to be taking a look at Magmakin Artillerist. Magmakin Artillerist is red and 2 for a creature elemental pirate 1/4. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent. You can cycle it for red and 1, and then when you cycle this card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Now there's a lot of positives to this card. Firstly, it's a 1/4 in an aggressive format. Being able to dodge any bolt-based damage is powerful. Also, having to have a fully powered up Galvanic Blast be able to kill this is really great too in terms of value. Now it also deals damage equal to the amount of cards you've discarded this turn, so it's not like the Dranith Stinger where it deals damage equal to the amount that you've cycled. Like every time you cycle a card you deal 1. This actually counts discard as well, which is great, because when you do cycle a card, as you see in the cost here, you do discard it, but it has some applications outside of maybe Pauper Cycle Storm. You also, it has the benefit of not triggering just once per turn. We see that in very common recent designs and things, so it's nice that you get your full amount of damage. And then also what's nice about it in something like Cycle Storm, which we'll discuss in a second, as you're going off, as you're kind of generating more mana, when you cycle this card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, so it helps your opponent kind of get low, and it kind of decreases the amount of time. A lot of times when you're playing this deck on MTGO, there can be a lot of clicking. The big downside to this obviously is that the cycling of this card costs a red and a 1, which can be a little tough to generate. The deck tends to be able to generate black mana really well, so you either want black mana or colorless mana, so that's going to be one of the things holding this card back. And I don't think, I think because of it, it may not be a full kind of play set type of card, but it's going to be copies like 5 and 6 of Dranith Stinger. So let's talk about the application of this card in 3 different ways. So firstly, the application first is going to be something like Cycle Storm. This is a list that went 15th place in a recent Pauper challenge here. And when it comes to something like this, we know that Dranith Stinger is one of the primary win conditions. Dranith Healer is also here if you need to play it to play out more street rates. And you also have Jihadist Ploy. Now, there's 2 different versions of Cycle Storm that really run around. There is the one that I think a lot of people associate with Brian Cook. That is the Rakdos version with some artifact synergies. It has the kind of draw 2 package, the one that Deadly Dispute creates a treasure and everything, so that's really nice. It's like another way to create your colored mana as you need it. But also what's nice with something like this is when it comes to having access to multiple colors, you get some nice sideboard cards in Knot of the Bone, but obviously playing to blue can make things a little tough because you kind of do want to cast Jihadist Ploy. This is the version that I personally play, but I do really like the Rakdos version as well. And in something like this, I imagine the flex slot really would be probably one, drop the Mirror Shell Crab and probably like 1 copy of the Architects of Will. The Horror of the Broken Lands is actually kind of funny because there are random situations where this does become a win condition against certain strategies. So that's what's really powerful, but that's probably where you would kind of insert that. I doubt this will be a full playset. Now in the Rakdos version of this deck, I think maybe things could be a little bit different. So let's kind of pop into that a little bit. So I believe this might actually be a little bit different. This is One Land Spy. This is like actually just a version of One Land Spy. Oh my lord. Okay, I thought this was going to be the Rakdos version of the deck, but I guess not. But regardless, in that version, you have Deadly Disputes, you have your artifact lands, you do kind of move through your deck, you have Rowan's Grim Search, you do have ways to kind of cycle through, and a lot of the same package. You're still playing the Reaping the Graves and the Songs of the Damned. You're just going to go off slightly a little bit different in the beginning, and you have a bit more mid-range to be able to go through your deck, maybe slightly more lands. But I think it becomes copies 5 and 6 of something like Dranith Stinger, because again, cycling for red in a 1 is probably the big thing that's going to hold it back. If it was cycling for 2 generic, it would be a lot better. I think 100% more people would be on board with it. The cost of it being red in 2, like 3 mana in total, it's not the biggest thing in the world. The fact that the cycling is red in 1 is the big thing that's going to hold it back. Ultimately, will it see play? Maybe, you know, right now in an aggressive metagame where we see, you know, probably we're going to get this card, not this card, but we're probably going to see part of the Brute Scale combo banned in March, probably with the next big BNR update. I imagine Pauper will kind of join along and kind of go with that update as well. Slow down the format a little bit, make some changes. We might see some unbans. For now, as the format is kept sped up, I imagine one of the things that Cyclestorm wants to do is also stay aggressive, stay fast. And so that additional power of just being able to deal 1 damage on the cycle, shorten your clock, just speed things up a little bit, I imagine can help in that aspect. So that's going to be a big boon towards it. Now, when it comes to comparing it to Draenei Stinger, as I was mentioning, the big thing to note is that this is when you cycle another card. This is going to matter down the line when we talk about the third and final kind of potential new combo that the Artillerist works with. And then again, the cycling being 1. Now, this is a lot easier to kind of deal with as a 2/2, but you know, there are random worlds where you might attack with it. That's probably really rare. If you have Draenei Stinger out on the battlefield, you are trying to win the game on the spot with something like this. But again, it's 2 mana cycles for 1 generic, which is really powerful. Now, when it comes to something like Cyclestorm, the key here is that it's not just about the fact that you are cycling, but that you are discarding. And that is something that also is enabled by the Magmakin, which is why I want to look at Madness Burn. Now, when it comes to a deck like this, there are very few slots. The deck list is actually pretty tight right now. Voldaren Epicure creates a blood token for you to create some discards. Sneaky Snacker is just one of the better threats in the archetype right now, and Kitchen Imp just being that madness card. Fiery Temper, Alms of the Vein as well. Vampire's Kiss just creating blood tokens as well, but also I think your flex slots end up being like Highway Robbery and maybe some amount of End the Festivities. I think ultimately what happens with a card like this is you have to remember, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself there. Ultimately where this card lands is that if you have it out on the battlefield, it's 3 mana. Then on 4, what you could do is you could Faithless Looting, draw 2, discard 2. So you're, you know, drawing 2 cards, discarding 2 cards, dealing 2 damage. And then you can flashback looting for 3 more mana. So on turn 4, then you can draw 2, discard 2. So you've drawn 2 cards, discarded a bunch of cards, and you are dealing 4 damage. Of course, if you just went off that Faithless Looting, maybe you drew like a Fiery Temper and Alms of the Vein, but you're also taking advantage of that Artillerist. And it's also nice because it can just cycle through. It could be that free source of damage if you needed to. If you didn't have a way to use it, you top decked it, that's great. It could be that second card drawn that you need off a Sneaky Snacker, draws you in a Faithless Looting. You're kind of drawing more cards there. So that's kind of nice with something like a Sneaky Snacker. And I think it has kind of play in an archetype like this. Will it be a 4 of playset? I'm not sure. I don't have too much experience with an archetype like this. I do like to play it every so often, but I won't speak for the people that do play it more often. I think there is room for at least 2 copies, if not 3 copies of a card like that in this deck. I think it only helps to like add a little bit of burn, that little extra piece to it. And what's nice is like in a world of Weather the Storm, you also have to keep in mind that that's cycling 1 damage. If you do happen to cycle away, that's 1 damage that doesn't add to a storm count of something like the Weather the Storm. Obviously, Weather the Storm will still beat it out. That's 1 damage versus Weather the Storm just coming down for 1 and, you know, just gaining you 3 life. So yeah, obviously you think about that over a course of the game, but it is something that, you know, in a small sense is relevant. Now I kind of got ahead of myself here, but the third big combo, the third big piece for a card like this that everyone's pointed out is Ophidian Eye. Now Ophidian Eye, blue and 2, and what's great about this is that it has flash for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, not to you, to an opponent, you may draw 1 card. Woo! Okay. What's nice is it's a May trigger as well. That's the beauty of something like this. Now, notably, this also works with something like Curiosity. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, it's not combat damage, you may draw a card. Curiosity doesn't have that flash, but it is significantly lower costed. And the way to use something like this is, yes, technically you could use this with Draenei Stinger, right? Already in the deck, but Draenei Stinger wants you to cycle another card, not discard. Discarding another card is a lot easier. Again, when you have cards like Faithless Looting in the format, discarding is a lot easier than cycling. So when you attach it to something like Magmakin Artillerist, the beauty of this is that when you have the Magmakin Artillerist and you then equip an Ophidian Eye to it, if you have something like 8 cards in your hand at end step, you essentially go pseudo infinite, where you discard a card to hand size, you draw a card, then you discard a card, draw a card, you just go infinite because you have to go down to hand size at the end of your turn. You have to go down to hand size. It's a continuous check. So you go over and over and over again. If you are at 8 cards, you just go over and over and over again. And you have to imagine this actually isn't that hard to do, because especially in a world where you have Faithless Looting with something like this, let's say, for example, you play this out on your main phase, you have, you know, a couple of cards, you're not at 7 or 8 cards. You could play something like Faithless Looting, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, but then because the Ophidian Eye put onto the Magmakin Artillerist, because you discard 2 cards, the Magmakin Artillerist deals damage, and then the Ophidian Eye draws you some cards. So you're back up. You're just back up on 2 cards. Faithless Looting is just net 2 cards. It's 1 mana, net 1 card. You are drawing net positive cards with that combo. Now, of course, there's a lot of cards that have to come together for something like this, but when you're talking about like a pseudo infinite loop here, a win condition, then you have to think about stuff like this. Now, obviously, there are ways to take advantage of this. There could be like an is it a cycle discard deck coming around, and that could happen with Dranit Stinger, Curiosity, Ophidian Eye, Dranit Stinger, and Magmakin Artillerist. Maybe some amount of disruption, a little bit of removal, cyclers, whatever. And then you wait for like a big turn to set yourself up, a little bit of protection maybe. Maybe you go, you add a little bit of green to have a little bit of protection. There are some protection spells that you could put in there. And then you just go off from there. Maybe it's Grixis, you play Duresses and removal. Maybe that's the combo. But I think, is it Ophidian Eye and is it Ophidian Artillerist could be an archetype that comes out of this? It's definitely got a lot of people hyped in terms of how it works with something like Ophidian Eye. And I think a lot of people will be trying it out. I think a lot of people will be brewing, trying to make this combo work. And especially again, in an archetype, in a format where things are so fast, you already have a Splinter Twin-like situation existing in the format, and things are meant to be super fast. This is a win condition that technically gets around Weather the Storm. Weather the Storm is a really popular main deck option, heck, even sideboard option right now. Take it from me as a 1-land spy player, I hate to see the card, but it is a popular option, and this win condition technically gets around it because you just cast the Magmakin Artillerist, you just cast the Ophidian Eye, and you just win from there. That's, you know, if you're at 6 mana, that's Weather the Storm gaining 9 life. That's not that bad because you're then going to draw out the rest of your deck. And it's a May ability, so you could just draw. Maybe you do play Grixis, you kind of poop out your whole hand, right? Like you're discarding cards, you're adding cards to your graveyard, then you Songs of the Damned, maybe there's a Reaping the Graves, you return it, and then you cycle again. You just keep going. Like if you don't have enough cards to maybe win through your opponent, they've gained so much life, doesn't matter. You just return you just keep going on the loop over and over and over again, right? Like you keep the mana jittering stuff in your hand. You keep 1 Songs of the Damned in your hand, 1 Reaping the Graves, and you just do it all over again. So there are lines, I think, that enable this type of combo. Maybe Grixis Ophidian Eye. Maybe this just ultimately ends up being in Cycle Storm and Ophidian doesn't really matter. Maybe Ophidian gets added to Cycle Storm for something like Magmakin Artillerist, because there are lines where in that deck you can just play out the Magmakin Artillerist, flash in the Ophidian Eye, protect it or something, and then just end the turn with a bunch of cards in your hand and just win from there. So I'm wondering if Cycle Storm just gets adapted to add a combo like this. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I think Magmakin Artillerist has a lot of promise in the Pauper format. It could work in Cycle Storm, it could work in Madness Burn, and it potentially could breed a whole new archetype, because it's like that rule of 8 thing where once you have 2 copies of a card you could play a kind of 4 of, then you actually have a critical mass where you can reasonably be able to find these combo pieces and go off in different ways. So I think a new archetype is potentially being born right in front of our eyes out of Aetherdrift, which is kind of cool. A standard legal set giving us some really cool Pauper staples and some cyclers. Now, the cyclers in this set notably are usually cycling for 2. I don't think there's a single one that cycles for 1, because then it would be like really relevant, especially if it was cycled for 1 generic. It'd be really relevant when it comes to Pauper Cycle Storm, especially depending on the color. If it had a really good on play ability, I'm saying on play, coming from just recording a One Piece video, but when it comes to an enter the battlefield effect. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. That's going to be the video today. Just really excited for something like Magmakin Artillerist and really excited to see where it goes. Let me know if you want to see some gameplay brewing, maybe not just Madness Burn, but Cycle Storm and everything. I imagine your favorite content creators like Brian Cook are probably going to be putting out a video or two on Cycle Storm with the Magmakin Artillerist, so check out his channel for something like that. But regardless, really excited for something like this, and can't wait to see what people are brewing in the Pauper leagues upcoming.